the Self Publishing Corner. I'm your host, Cheryl Denise Bannerman, author and publisher, and I'm thrilled to bring you another episode filled with real world tips for writers and authors. Today I'm joined by someone who helps writers think bigger and more strategically about their books. Linda Secondari, owner of Studiolo Secondari. Linda is the creator of the Strategic Author, a guided coaching program that helps authors think like publishers so their books aren't just written, they're ready. With more than 25 years in traditional publishing as an in house creative director, she helps writers understand where their work fits in the market, how to position themselves, and how to move through the query, rejection, and decision process with more clarity and confidence. In this episode, she'll be sharing practical guidance on planning your path, crafting stronger queries, and taking care of yourself as you navigate the traditional publishing journey. Welcome, Linda.
Oh, thank you so much, Cheryl. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to get started talking.
I am too. I know you have a wealth of knowledge for our listeners. I'm going to actually jump in with the traditional publishing experience. I want to talk about how that experience shaped the direction that you chose in starting Studiolo Secondari.
Oh, great. Yeah, no, that's exciting. Let's start at the beginning. So I worked in-house for various publishers for more than 25 years. And for most of that time, I was a creative director.
Mm-hmm.
So that meant I was responsible for the design of the covers and the interiors of books, as
Okay.
well as a lot of our digital products and our websites. I worked really closely with marketing, sales, editorial,
Mm.
manufacturing, and I sat in on, you know, launch meetings where we would talk about the manuscripts that had been acquired that were
Okay.
moving into production. We were figuring out, when those books would come out, how we were going to be promoting them and marketing them,
Mm-hmm.
and the audience that they would be appealing to and why they were important. And as a creative director, I often sort of sat in between uh, editorial, who had very, clear ideas about what the book was about and who the author was,
Right.
and how they interpreted the book in the market. And then marketing and sales, who sometimes wanted the book to be about something perhaps a little more adjacent to what it was actually about, because that had more sales potential as far as they were concerned. And
Uh,
they would look at me as, when we were talking about the cover design, how are we going to, square this circle? And I'm sitting there, you know, dealing with this. And over the years, because I have published, thousands of books,
yeah.
it became sort of second nature to me to be able to position a book in my head from the information that I was being given by editorial and by marketing and sales, the expectations of the publisher, even really understanding how to see this book on the bookshelf and to understand who the audience was and how we were going to signal to that audience that this was the book for them.
Yeah.
So I use those skills in my business, Studiolo Secondari, and in my coaching program, the Strategic Author. I've developed a methodology around those skills that I call the four questions. And with the four questions, we're looking at the why, the who, the what, and the how of a book.
Mm-hmm.
And through answering those questions, we can develop a roadmap publishing plan for a book. and
Yeah.
really understand how best to position that book in the market, but also position that manuscript with agents and editors for acquisition.
Hmm. I mean, I know a lot of folks that are like me, an author and a self publisher, wish that we were a fly on the wall in some of those type
Hmm.
meetings. You were actually
Yeah,
in the midst of it, just gaining all of that knowledge in all the areas that you spoke of, from editing to manufacturing. That's just incredible, to
it
be able
is.
to
Yeah.
take what you've gathered through all those years and build up a strategy for your own firm. That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
incredible.
Thank you.
I've often heard you talk about guiding writers to build a ideal versus backup plan. Is that
Hmm.
right? What does that process look like?
Well, when I coach authors, the first of my four questions that we deal with is why. Why are you publishing a book? And, sometimes they come to me with really aspirational whys, like I want to be a New York Times bestseller.
Yeah,
I'm
don't
interested
we all?
in, yeah, exactly. I want to have rave reviews in the, book review. Um, and those are definitely good goals to have. And
Yeah.
obviously, if you don't have a published book, you cannot have a bestseller. So,
Right,
by all means,
right,
publish that book and see if it is a bestseller. But
right.
when I work with authors, I try to dig deeper and look at
Mm,
real, authentic whys that will motivate authors while they're in the midst of writing, because we know writing is hard,
mm,
and there's
yes.
that point in the messy middle, which I call the pit of despair, where
Mm,
you see how long it's taken you to get where you are, and you
yes,
understand how much farther you have to go. And you really start
yes.
questioning all your assumptions. You question the work itself, you question why you're doing it. And
Yeah,
if you don't have a why that is really going to motivate you, you're not going
yeah,
to get through that pit of despair. And
yeah.
thinking, at midnight, when you're so tired and you don't want to be writing anymore, oh, I'm going to have a New York Times bestseller, that's, I argue, is not motivating. What's motivating is,
Right.
I'm writing my family history, and my children and my grandchildren will have this. Or I have
Yes.
always wanted to be a published writer. I want to have a
Yeah.
book on my bookshelf that has my name on it. That kind of
Yes.
motivation is real and true, and that will keep you going.
Yes.
So, along those lines, when we're grappling with the why, a lot of authors come to me and they say they want to be traditionally published. They want to be
Yeah.
published by Penguin Random House, or, Knopf, and again, if you don't have a manuscript, you will not be published by any of these traditional publishers. So,
Right.
absolutely give it a try, but also
Yeah.
understand that the statistics are pretty rough when you
Yeah.
look at authors submitting manuscripts. It's around, I think, 4 or 5%, which is, my kids are in college now, so I know these stats really well. It's about the same stat as getting into Harvard, which is
Yes.
hard. Again, not
Yes.
impossible. And I don't mean to be a naysayer at all, but I do think it's important for us to have aspirational goals and realistic goals.
Realistic.
So when
Yeah.
authors come to me and they say, I want to be, published by one of the big five, I say, you go for that. But let's also look at what your backup plan is.
Yeah.
If you get rejected, if you can't get an agent, if it does not work out, what are you going to
Mhm.
do? Are you going to just
Yeah.
close that file on that manuscript and put it away and that's it? If that's your backup plan, fine. But I think that there are other options, and we talk about what those other options are,
Right.
so that again, they can be motivated, and when it gets dark and scary, they know that they have, an ideal plan, and then they have a backup plan. Because I don't know
Yeah.
about you, but in life, I always have a backup plan.
Always. If they don't have chocolate at the store, I get vanilla.
Exactly. Exactly. Give vanilla a chance.
But when you were talking about realistic expectations, it's like, being realistic about the facts of what really happens out there, you know, what is the statistic on Amazon that they said how many how many books were published a day? Do you remember?
Mm,
That's
I don't
thousands and
remember that.
thousands are
Yeah,
published,
yeah. A
every
day.
day,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
the competition is
The
very
competition's
vast,
fierce.
and you have to really keep that in mind when you're talking about setting goals. Um, which leads me to positioning.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be positioned correctly
Yep.
on any platform, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, whatever, in order to be seen, in order to be successful. Can you tell me a little bit about, the positioning process and how you help writers understand where their book fits in the market?
Yeah. Yeah. So, this is really why I started my coaching program, The Strategic Author, because I found that working with authors, that they don't understand the publishing business, and that's fine, because I don't understand dentistry because I'm not a dentist. So no one would expect me to understand that. But for some reason, just because you write a manuscript, all of a sudden there's this expectation that you understand everything about this industry that is completely foreign to you, most likely, unless
So true.
came up through publishing. Um, and so I begin talking to my authors about positioning, and positioning, it's a term of art in publishing. I mean, everyone in publishing knows what it means when you're like, what's the position? What bookshelf does it sit on?
Okay.
We know what that
So
means,
that's common lingo.
common
Okay.
lingo. But in the real world, it isn't common lingo. So
Right.
one of the first things you want to do once you understand what your book is about, once
Mhm.
you, even if it's just an idea,
Mhm.
I have an idea of a book, it's a detective book that's going to take place in a cute little Vermont coastal town, right?
Mhm.
Okay, I haven't written it yet, but that's my idea of a book. Well, start looking for other books that are like that. And in the
Mm.
industry, we call those comparables. Those are comparable
Yeah.
titles, titles that are similar to the book that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And you look for some comps and you begin to see that there are, cozy mysteries, cozy murders, cozy detective novels. And so,
Mhm.
oh, I'm interested in writing a cozy book, a cozy mystery, a cozy
Mhm.
mystery set in a rural area that, you begin to define these genre types,
Yes.
and you're getting this information because of these comparable titles, these comparable
Mhm.
titles that you can find on Amazon. You look up one book, and then Amazon tells you all the other books that people who liked that book
Right.
like. Or you can go on Goodreads, or you can go on any
Yeah, that's true.
number of reading, subreddits,
Yes.
and look to see if people are reviewing a book, are they also mentioning, oh, it reminded me of XYZ title?
Yes.
Once you start seeing that kind of ecosystem that your book lives in, you begin to learn a lot. Are these books really long? Are they short? So, for instance, fantasy books tend to be pretty long,
Pretty long, yeah.
if you go to a bookstore or a library and you start pulling them out, they're big chunks.
Pretty thick, yeah.
Right. And what does that tell you? That tells you that those fantasy readers, they want to
Hmm.
invest in a book. They want to dive in. And there's also
Yeah.
lots of series in that genre.
Hmm.
Lots of
Yeah.
series. Similar with detective and crime, there are lots of series, but those
Yeah.
books tend to be shorter. So people are
Shorter.
moving through them more quickly, whereas fantasy people really want to like live there for a while. If you think like the Game of Thrones series, those books
Oh
were like
goodness, yeah.
1100 pages, you know.
Lord of the
Um,
Rings.
Lord of the Rings. These are long, epic stories with
Yeah.
long, epic books. So you begin to learn around about the expectations for the genre, and those
Yeah.
expectations are really based on the audience's expectations.
Yeah.
So it starts with these comparable titles, and so much can be learned from those comparable titles.
Yeah. Very interesting. When you're looking at comparables, I know you talked about page numbers and the theme. Does pricing come into play at all when you're
Absolutely.
looking?
Yeah.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah. So when I am in my coaching program, one of the exercises that we have
Mhm.
is to do a deep dive in your comparables to come up with 5 to 25 comparables. I give them a spreadsheet, and it has columns for all sorts of information,
Mhm.
including the book type. Is it a hardcover? Is it a paperback? Is it an ebook? Is it an audiobook? And the
Yeah.
pricing, and for the print books, how long are they? And
Okay.
you begin to see price points. So
Mhm.
for business books, there's two main sort of audiences for business books. Sometimes they're the cloth audience, and those tend to be slightly pricier, and bulkier. But when you get
Okay.
into the paperback, the price point drops significantly, and they're looking for volume, because a business book can really move a lot of units. um,
Yeah.
and so you begin to see these expectations. So I'm currently working with an author who is writing a business book,
Yeah.
and we're going to go direct to paper. We're not going to go cloth. Direct to
Okay.
paper, not a very long book, a really manageable price, and looking for volume. Whereas I'm currently working with a fantasy author, and her book is going to be 400 plus pages, and
Yeah.
fantasy readers have expectations around the book manufacturing itself, that it's
Yes.
beautiful. It's got a beautiful
Yes.
cover. It's got the
I've
printed
noticed that.
edges. It's,
Yeah.
it's got illustrations with maps and,
Illustrations. Yes.
all these things that add to the
So
unit cost. I
true.
mean, they just make the book more expensive, but they're
Yeah.
willing to pay for that because they want these almost fetish objects. I mean, they're
Yeah.
just beautiful objects on their own.
Yeah.
Uh, so different audiences have different expectations, and again, it's through comparables that anyone can begin to see these patterns emerge.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about I don't know what it's called. What is the gold on
The
on
gilded
the
edge,
edges of the,
yeah, gilded
yeah, what's it called?
edges, yeah,
Gilded. Okay.
gilded
It's
edges,
so pretty.
yeah, yeah, so pretty, yeah, and the
Yeah.
printed edges now, with different
Oh
motifs
wow.
and stuff. I mean, there's just
Yeah.
book manufacturing. I mean, we've been making books for 700 years. We really we can make some pretty books.
Yeah.
But also, audio and ebooks are
Yeah.
definite players in the industry.
Yeah.
I just saw a statistic explaining that a lot of philosophy books are actually read as ebooks, which sort of surprised me.
Oh,
I thought maybe philosophers would want to have a
okay.
bookcase full of books, but apparently,
Yeah.
romance used to be the same, but now I think romance is kind
Yeah.
of it's having its moment, and so now romance books are kind of going into that romanticy style more. where
Right.
they're, as we've been describing, are really beautifully made. But it
Yeah.
used to be,
Huh.
I think, romance was very ebook because there was, sort of an attitude like, oh, you're reading romance, but now that's gone
Yeah.
gone out the window.
What do you think about hardcover? Is that mostly for business books now? Or is anyone still
Well,
doing it?
yeah, well, traditional publishers still publish most of their books as well, trade
Hardcover
books as hardcover, and
with a
then
jacket.
with a jacket, and then they'll go out with a paperback, depending on the sales of the hardcover. They might go
Mhm.
out with a paperback as early as 6 months after, or sometimes
Okay.
they'll try to, like, if the hardback sales continue at a pace. I mean, they
Right.
just make more money on a hardcover. They'll try to draw that
Of
out for
course.
18 months, a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but you see a lot of these paperbacks with flaps that, so they look like a jacket. It looks like a
Oh.
jacket because they have flaps on the inside. And I think some publishers are going out with that first for
Oh.
the right kind of book. It's not for every book.
Yeah.
But because it makes the paperback feel more special, but it's still less
Yeah.
expensive from a
Yeah.
manufacturing perspective, and shipping, of course. you
Yeah.
know, um, every manufacturing decision, including the length of a book, which makes it heavier, has an
Yeah.
impact on not only the cost per unit in manufacturing, but how much it
Mhm.
costs to ship those books around. And you're
Right.
always going to have to pay for shipping if you're doing traditional printing, because
Mhm.
as opposed to print on demand, because even just getting them from the book manufacturing plant to your
Mhm.
warehouse requires shipping. I mean,
Yeah.
they don't just appear somewhere. They always have to be shipped.
Mhm.
And, there are obviously environmental impacts on these
Yeah.
decisions as well.
Yeah.
Um, I saw, I think just this week, that
Yeah.
the EU determined that they have some very strict paper laws coming on
Oh.
in 2026,
Oh.
around environmental, making sure that paper is being created environmentally well. And
Okay.
they've exempted books. I don't know if they've
Okay.
permanently exempted books or just
Yeah.
for a little bit, but
Mhm.
I think that's interesting because I think the industry wasn't really ready to deal with that yet.
Yeah. Interesting. And of course, everything affects our royalties.
Yes,
So,
absolutely. Yeah.
well, let's go into query letters because it's actually a common struggle for authors trying to get into traditional publishing. Um, what guidance do you offer writers when they are trying to craft a strong query letter, and what makes a good query letter stand out?
Yeah, well, again, the comparables are super helpful.
Mhm.
Being able to show an agent or an
Mhm.
editor that you understand the market for your book
Mm.
through really intelligent comparables is a great way to just signal that you are an author who knows their stuff, and that will make them sit up and take notice. Um,
Okay.
a few other things. You have to understand that a lot of query letters, I mean, there are all sorts of different agencies and publishers, but a good number of those query letters are going through some sort of gatekeeping. So either that's an AI that's going through them to see whether or
True.
not they should be selected, or it's someone's assistant at the very least. But someone other than the agent or editor is looking at your query letter. So
Yep.
they're also giving it about 15 seconds. They're just skimming it. So
Wow.
do not have,
Less than what I thought.
yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that because I've timed it, but everything in life now, I
Yeah,
think
it's
is
a
around
skim.
15 seconds. Everyone's skimming. We're in the age of skimming, but so make it skimmable. You use short paragraphs, bulleted notes,
Yeah.
just really make it easy to skim, make some stuff bold. Uh,
Mhm.
just as in writing your book, that first sentence is very important. You're going to win or lose on that first sentence with your reader, whether they're reading your book or whether they're reading your query letter. And they are
Yeah.
looking at your query letter as a representation of your writing. And I
Mm,
understand, like you could be a children's book writer, and a query letter is a very different kind of writing, but you still need
yeah.
to be able to master that.
Mm,
Um, and as with everything, I think it's really important to think about your audience while you're writing it
mhm.
and personalize it. Don't just send out a generic query letter to five different agents.
Yes.
Make sure when you're personalizing it, make sure
Mhm.
you are giving the agent what the agent says they want. They all have, stipulations on what
Yes.
they want. Don't
No,
give
that's
them a full
true.
manuscript if they're only asking for 50 pages. Don't be sure you're reading what they want and you're giving
Mm,
them what they're asking for.
mhm.
Um, and be able to say something about yourself because
Okay.
they're
To make it personable, is that what you mean?
right. They're
Okay.
they're getting into a relationship with you. It's kind of like singles dating, it's like
Yeah.
getting on Grinder or Match or, I'm married, so I'm not really familiar with
Me
Tinder or,
neither. I'm
any of these apps that I hear about. But,
Mm,
the relationship is with the people, not with the manuscript. The
yeah.
manuscript is what's causing the relationship to happen, but the relationship is between the people. So make sure that you share something about yourself that
Yeah.
makes you approachable and interesting. Do your research.
Yeah.
Also, like at a certain agency, do not send your manuscript to multiple agents at the same agency. That's a real no-no.
Oh, yes.
Um,
No.
so you have to do your homework. It's like
Yeah.
applying for a job. It's the same
Yeah.
rigor that's required now for applying for a job.
Yeah, those are really good tips, and I'll just add in there, don't use AI to write this. You want
Hmm.
it to really feel like yourself. If
Hmm.
they see a lot of M dashes and and in formal text such as I have instead of I've, stuff like that. It can make it seem very impersonal, personable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Well, with query letters, comes rejection.
Mm.
It's a normal part of the journey when you're doing traditional. Uh, how do you encourage writers to handle rejection?
Well, I mean, there's so many stories of incredibly, respected authors who were rejected so many times. I
So
think
many.
Stephen King was rejected like 35 times,
Yes.
and he only continued sending, and it was for Carrie. He only continued
Mhm.
sending that manuscript out because his wife insisted.
Yes.
J.K. Rawlings was
Mhm.
famously rejected, I think 45 times or something. I mean,
Yes.
so there, just because you've been rejected, and I think we've all been rejected in some way. We've all applied for a job that we didn't get, or,
Yes.
you know, um, it's
All
it's
throughout life.
it's life, and I think we just need to understand that we just need the one, you
That's
don't
right.
need five agents who want to
That's
work
right.
with you. You just need that one agent who wants to work with
That's
you.
right.
Um, And then again, that's where my backup plan comes in. At a
Yeah.
point, and everyone has a different tolerance for this, but at some point,
Mm-hmm.
an author might begin to think, why am I doing this? This doesn't feel good anymore.
Yeah.
And, you know, potentially explore self-publishing. And the thing that I tell my coaching clients is that, it's these are not silos. There's traditional publishing in all of its variations. There's hybrid publishing.
Hybrid. Yeah.
There's indie publishing.
Yes.
There's indie publishing, maybe with crowdfunding. All of these
Sure.
are paths, but
Yeah.
they can overlap and they
Mm-hmm.
can turn one into the other. There are many stories of indie published books that were then noticed by traditional publishers and were brought
Yeah.
on and did very well. And
Mm-hmm.
I am actually working with an author right now who was traditionally published and has taken his copyright back. And for his third edition, wants to uh, publish independently because he has
Oh.
the audience, he has the means to do it.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, he's going to have more control and he's going to make more money on every book he
Yes.
sells because he's selling it himself. So
Yeah.
that's what I mean by these paths are they're not
Yeah.
silos, they can overlap. So,
Yeah.
you know, rejection's what it is, but
Mm-hmm.
you have to pick yourself up and dust yourself off and
Yeah.
decide if you want to keep doing it. And if you don't, then move to your second best option, which can
Yeah. I
turn out to
think.
be your best option.
Yes. Exactly. And it really does all come back to where you started with your true motivation and having that backup plan. Just really important in your process. That's great. Well, I think everyone, all my listeners would agree with me that writing and publishing is it's it's a full-time job, but you might be doing all that while you're working a
Mhm.
full-time job. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
so, all of this writing and publishing, it can be overwhelming. And so, it's important that we protect our well-being, our mental health, right? Balance.
Yeah.
How do you encourage writers to maintain that balance um, with the ups and downs, going through this process?
Yeah. Well, a lot of that is personal. I myself have a meditation practice, and
Mm,
I really believe in uh, exercise or walking at the very least to clear
yeah,
your mind.
those
Um,
endorphins.
yeah. Um, a change of perspective, just be even going into a different room, getting a glass of water.
Yes.
Um, all of these small things can help. I don't know about you, but I do some of my best thinking in the shower.
Yeah.
I think it's because I'm so disassociated from everything else that's happening in my life. My brain can
Yes.
clear. So we need to
Mhm.
look at self-care and those moments of rest as really just another tool in our creative toolkit, not as
Mhm.
like, oh, I'm so lazy, I'm not doing anything. No,
Right.
you need to do that. You need to
Yeah.
not do anything sometimes so that the creativity has a chance to kind of reassemble itself. But also, you
Yeah.
start to have those mashups, like, oh, this idea and this idea go great together, chocolate and peanut butter.
Yes.
Who'd have thunk it? But you need to have those periods of time where you go to a museum or you go out with friends. It can't
Mhm.
just be relentless. Relentless is not good. And I say this for myself as much as I'm saying this
Mhm.
for everyone else, because life currently it doesn't stop. It's 24 hours we could be working constantly if we had the energy. So, but that's not
Yeah.
healthy. That's not healthy. I also think being part of communities. So, one of the reasons
Mm.
why I expanded my one-on-one coaching to include a group program
Yeah.
is because of the importance of community. You know,
Yeah.
we've got a platform and there's, messaging there, and,
Yeah.
people can post things just about
Yeah.
how they're feeling and they'll get a response, or maybe they have a question, has anyone
Yeah.
encountered this problem? And they have other people who they can rely on. And we
Yeah.
do, we do office hours where people can, just jump on a Zoom
Hmm.
and talk about what's going on. And just remembering that you're not alone is
Hmm.
so important also, because
Yeah.
writing is very solitary. It's
Yeah.
solitary, and
It is.
it's hard,
Yeah.
that's why there are so many books about why writing is hard, because
Yeah.
writing actually is hard.
It really is.
And if we can find community, that also really lessens the burden.
I always find that taking my laptop, like maybe to the back patio or the kitchen
Mm-hmm.
counter, like
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a bar counter, not the cooking part, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
but the change, like you said, in environment,
Mm-hmm.
it's if well, before I was closer to the beach, but I would take my laptop to the beach, or
Mm-hmm.
so a
Yeah.
different environment just
Mm-hmm.
really helps. It's
Definitely.
inspiring. It inspires all the brain cells.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's full of possibility.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have one final question for you. Um, do you have a famous quote?
A famous quote.
Yeah.
Oh, well, actually, I just,
Or
conc-
favorite? You don't have to. You don't have to
um,
make up one.
no, I was today actually, I just concluded, my fall cohort with my coaching program,
Okay.
and I mentioned this quote, and um, I don't know how appropriate it is in this setting, but since you've asked for a quote, and this really is, it's my mantra. It's been my
Yeah.
mantra since I was 18 years old, and it's from Dune, the book
Okay.
Dune, which I really love. And the quote is, and this is a paraphrase, it's not the actual quote, but
Of
it's a
course.
paraphrase. Fear is the mind killer. I will see the path that my fear has taken. It will pass through me, and I will see that I remain. So
Oh,
whenever I'm doing
love that.
something intimidating, I think to
Yes.
myself, fear is the mind killer. And
Mm.
I'm not gonna let it kill my mind. I'm gonna keep going.
Yes. Because in the end, you're still standing.
I'm still
That's
there.
incredible. Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for that.
Well, you're
Well, this has
welcome.
been such an informative episode with Linda. Linda, if any of my listeners want to join that coaching program, how can they do that?
Oh, well, thank you so much. I would love to have your authors join my program. I have all the information is available on my website, which is studiolosecondari.com. And
Great.
in the services navigation, you can find the
Hmm.
strategic author. And on that
Okay.
page is all the information about the strategic author program.
Excellent. And we will have all of Linda's information and links right in the description area below this video. Thank you
Great.
so much for your time today.
Well, thank you, Cheryl, for inviting me. It's been really a lot of fun to talk about publishing with you.
It was such a pleasure. I learned a lot myself. So, thanks everyone for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Self Publishing Corner podcast. Until next time, Bye.